Samdai, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Cambodia Economic Growth Policy Dialogue. Today I have the pleasure to have two good friends foremost, Matthew Rendall from Kinstellar, Cambodia, and Youdi from Bun Associates, two prominent practicing lawyer in the Cambodia legal scene. And today what we want to cover was more on the various commercial legal development that can take Cambodia forward to, in this case, I would say, to achieve our goal to attain the vision, Cambodia Vision 2050. Because the Cambodian government now have in place a council for legal reform with the aim exactly to change the landscape of the legal situation so that Cambodia can move toward that rule-based, rule of law country where we can attract investment, we can provide a good forum for investors to invest in Cambodia. So all these things are taking place, and the Deputy Prime Minister Wong Savior, he's leading, and I happen to be the Vice Chair, and we are looking forward 25 years from now, where do we want to see Cambodia to be? And legal issue, legal development, legal framework is definitely one core aspect of that vision. So, Youdi, let me start with you. You've been practicing for what, like over 20 years?
Yeah, 23 years.
Yeah, 23 years. You held different position, but foremost now you the managing partner of Bun Associates. But at one point you also served for as a president of the National Commercial Arbitration Center. And so many things that you are involved from that commercial aspect side. How do you see, number one, how do you see our current situation? And later on, we will look a bit more to the future.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. I would say that there is our legal framework become more comprehensive, sophisticated. I mean, when I start my career, we probably have like one law adopted every few years. But now, as the priority of the government, it's quite set. A lot of regulation is in place. I think it's important to know where the direction the country is going on. Second thing, I observe that now more and more regulation is drafted by local talent. Unlike in the past, in the early days, where we have to count on some foreign experts that have to fly in short term. So I can say that generally the quality of the regulation is quite good. I also observe the modernity in some contents. For example, the investment law, who introduce encourage investment in something like climate protections, technology usage, but also if you invest in some activity that is promote welfare of the staff. So I think it's quite interesting to witness this change in terms of the volume, but also the context of that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Matt, I mean, we go way back nearly 30 years. You know, at that time you were teaching law at the National University of Management, right? The faculty of law there. From your perspective, at that time, you know, what is your perspective at that time?
My perspective, that's a point that UD makes is a very good point. Back then, everything was drafted by foreigners, and we were part of that. I mean, we were the foreigners in here. You know, the first 10 years I was here with USAID-funded projects helping draft laws. When we drafted laws, it was based on what we knew from our countries, assuming it would work everywhere. And back in those days, when we taught law at the National University, well, Faculty of Business back then, we were teaching contract law, we were teaching sale of goods law, we were using foreign laws to teach Cambodians because we didn't have the laws in place. So we were basically teaching the basic concepts. Now you have, like Youdi says, laws written by Cambodians. Two things on that. One is very sustainable now. We can draft these all day long at the rate we need to without having to rely on foreign aid funding and foreigners. But secondly, they're incredibly relevant now. So I'll give you an anecdote. Last week I was at the getting my Cambodian passport renewed. And on the wall was a schedule of fees, right? So it was very clear what you paid, how long it would take, and what needed to be done. This was not the issue. This was not in place 20 years ago. So when foreign investors came in, the biggest problem we had, or they had, was certainty. They did not know what things would cost. When they asked us lawyers what it would cost, we'd have to say, well, look, it kind of depends who you ask, right? You schedule fees, you put in place very practical steps how to do things. It makes it a lot easier for investors and adds to certainty. I think that's the biggest difference between then and now. Then relying on foreign laws, teaching foreign laws, laws written by foreigners. Now, very practical steps. A foreigner can come in here, know the steps, and they're very Cambodian-centric. So I think that's the big difference. If I was teaching now, I'm teaching Cambodian law. Back then we were teaching foreign law, really. That's the big difference, yeah.
Well, I mean, from my involvement in the Council for Legal Reform, what we are looking for to do, basically, is to ensure that everything is consistent. Yes. Because, I mean, I need to go back to the days when we negotiated the WTO accession. There was a big fallacy at that time because we thought that whatever the WTO endorsed, we okay, because we were required to submit about some 80 pieces of legislation and regulation. But one thing that we didn't know was that the WTO are all economists. They may be trade lawyers, but they're foremost economists. Yeah. And when they say the law looks good, they meant more from the economic perspective, from the policy, from trade policy perspective, not necessarily you're good on the legal side, right? So you may have a system difference between Anglo-Saxon and civil law country, and that's why what we try to do now is to make Cambodian law not a copy of foreign law and try to adjust, right? So I mean, and the Commercial Arbitration Center, which you happen to be the president for what, for
3 years,
for 3 years, was from that the context of accession to the WTO. Yes. We want to provide a dispute resolution mechanism, you know, to that investor are comfortable, and arbitration is.
Yeah, Pooh, thanks for brought it up. Actually, contract enforcement is a very important element to determine investment climate of a country. You may raise question that Cambodia is a very open economy, no restrictions on foreign ownership, no capital reinvestments. So why the ranking is still challenging? It's because of the contract enforcement part that is draw everything down. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if we want to have good quality investor and diversify, offer a effective dispute resolution for contract enforcement is very important. I remember that when I involved this project in the early days, there's one trainer from Singapore telling me that Youdi, you should take the opportunity to help Cambodia. He used the word accelerate the judicial reform, because judicial reform, like everywhere, take times because there's a lot of dimension to it. But when we talk about commercial investment, that is what they want. And at that time, Myanmar was not yet ratified the conventions. Laos is still far behind. And even though Vietnam was like created before us, but I think their structure is not very conducive. So I think, so that's motivated me. It looked like a mission that I can help to accelerate the the resolution of concern of investor. I would like to say that commercial arbitrations, which is on the basis of the New York Convention, originally is like it is a compromise by states so that the sovereignty on limit their sovereignty on commercial. They allow the party to transact and to make a private agreement to resolve that. So that's very critical, and I'm happy to share with you that now we have about 48 cases. The sum of dispute reached 168 million. Almost 50% of the case is involve foreign parties. It means that foreign investor have some kind of trust in the system to start with. So I think it's a very interesting to have Cambodian investor. This is really a mechanism that allow them to arbitrate in a Cambodian law related matter. You always can go to Singapore for that, but imagine that there is less Cambodian law expert in Singapore if you have a lot of evidence in Cambodian languages. So, and it's also most important is cost effective. I mean, Singapore is very and Hong Kong is very advanced in its own, but it probably could not cover a lot of segments that is relevant to type of investment and in terms of size and type of, for Cambodia. So I think it's very important, and this certainly can help the private sector to move forward. Yeah.
Matthew, what's your take on arbitration?
Yeah, I think it was one of the biggest, most positive developments in terms of helping with investment into Cambodia. And the reason is that when it comes to disputes in commerce, foreigners are very familiar with the concept of commercial arbitration. So it wasn't something we had to sell to them. They have that, and they go use that as their first choice generally anyway. I mean, I'm from Australia. I'm Australian admitted. And when we were doing cases back then, a long time ago, we go to court. The courts would steer you to arbitration first for expediency reasons. Now, people trusted the courts in Australia, of course, but the idea is it's quicker, it's more efficient, and you have to continue your business, like UD says. It has mechanisms within commercial arbitration where you can continue with business while that case continues on. Difficult in courts to do that. So it's something that foreigners are very familiar with. And that's why I think it was your stat that 50% involve foreigners. That's that's very pleasing to hear, but that's also not surprising because it would be our go-to way of resolving disputes. So when that happened, I thought that was one of the biggest moves forward in terms of assisting foreign investment here, because contract enforcement, absolutely, the biggest roadblock to foreigners considering investing in Cambodia, and this helps tremendously with that.
Yeah. There's also a credit to our accession to the WTO. That's part of the.
I would say the WTO was basically the ground floor in terms of a message to the world that we're open for business. And I'm very happy to also know that a few years ago, the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Justice Kadet, has established a committee to work on establishing a commercial court, right? And I think there are some international organization, ADB is helping setting up. So these are the scene, the evolution that I see this country is putting forward, right? But I want to go back to something that I personally was quite involved, is that when we negotiate WTO, the one thing that we in the government, because at that time I was in the government, I'm back in the government now, we had legal development was not really on the agenda, top priority of the government, because we have to worry about poverty, we have to worry about pothole in the road, we have to worry about no electricity for 3 hours, and the argument of some ministers, they say, look, Sapana, we have an advisor in the ministry already. We have legal advisors, so they should know. But the problem is that you have French legal advisor, you have American legal advisor, you have Australian legal advisor, and at the end, the guy who is confused is the Cambodian. So basically what we had is a mixture of civil law and common law. Right? And it's quite clear. Our commercial law was Anglo-Saxon inspired. But now our court system is civil law. So how do you see moving forward? Are we going to reconcile that?
I think Cambodian have shown some aspect where they absorb the two systems well. For example, I think trust. Trust is a concept
common law.
Yeah, common law. It does not exist in civil law, but because trust is quite known in use elsewhere, and it's also fit in the purpose that we want to serve as a economic grow, because they can use for various reasons. So I think when they draft the law, they align with certain principle that is open in our principle, but translate into a law. So I think that's not an issue per se. If you look at the financing, because we are a country that need a lot of building, a lot of infrastructures, and the financing usually come from overseas. So we see that they still choose a lot of English law, which is the most famous one. But our lawyers who working on project are more familiar with it, and so I think in reality it's not really a conflict, but it's just that when you work on that particular subject, you have to know where it's come from, and you have to make sure that it's clear and how it was built.
My take on this, I think the civil law versus common law issue is more an academic issue. Because the reality is, so long as you know what the law is, so long as you know what the rules are, and basically in commercial law, generally globally, it's very common law based anyway, but the principles are generally the same. But so long as an investor comes in, they know what the rules are, and they're applied that way. That's it. It doesn't really matter, is it a common law issue, a concept, a civil law concept. So where the biggest distinction is, I think, would be difficult, well, not difficult, but more or less known about is procedures in court. Absolutely. That's where it really differs. Okay, but again, the lawyers are going to handle that for the investor, right? So investigating judges, the role of the judge in the civil law versus common law courts, massively different. But whether it's a civil law concept or common law concept, it's like an academic thing. The investor just wants to know, what is the rule? So as long as I understand what the rule is, what I can and can't do, what the fee is to do that, and as long as it gets applied that way, whether it's a common law or a civil law concept, not so relevant for investment law, for commercial law. So I don't really have an issue with that. I thought that the time it came up most prominently, the land law here, when we were involved in the drafting of that in 2000, was in the 1990s, was common law based, because it was based on title by registration, the Torrens title system, the Australian system actually. When the civil code came in, drafted by the Japanese, they went to title by recordation, a very American, American plus civil law based concept. So there was a clash there. At the end of the day, what happens at the Ministry of Land is what matters. So whoever's on the title at the Ministry of Land is the owner of the land. That's a sort of title by registration system. So you've just got to look at practically what are the laws. Sometimes we get a clash. You were talking before about I think you were talking before about trying to make things uniform. There are certain areas where we need to tighten that up. So the land law does clash in a way with the civil code on land issues. So as long as we make those all uniform, we're okay. But the civil law versus common law dichotomy, I think it's more for the teachers, the academics at that level on the ground. It's just what is the rule, and so long as we can understand that and we enforce that, that's all we need to know.
Well, okay, so but as a country, from a policy perspective, at some point we have to reconcile all that. It's quite clear, and that's why the Prime Minister has tasked Excellency Wong Sevisot to lead that Council for Legal Reform. But of course, the timeline is quite long, because we want to take our time, and as you said, we want Cambodian lawyer. those who grew up, who understand our culture, because law has a lot to do with culture and custom, let's face it. And what we had is that in the past, as Matthew mentioned, you have a lot of foreigners, because at that time we don't have any law. So I think we're working on that time horizon. It's so hopefully we have already established a secretariat. We populate the secretariat. We start looking at what are the various aspects we need to do. The Prime Minister has launched it about recently, the council. So I think we're on that track. But in the meantime, we have to look at how do we attract more investment to Cambodia. When investors come, the first thing they do a due diligence of our legal system.
Yes.
And I mentioned, for example, the doing business ranking of the World Bank, for example. What is your take on that?
Yeah.
How do we improve our ranking?
Well, I think we should. I would say that the challenge that we face as a practitioner is sometimes it's not about the law, it's about the practice.
Okay.
So I think education on the practice is very important. The governance issue, as a small country, small market, it is important to attract a good but also diversify investor.
Yes.
When I say diversify, it's very important. For example, a Japanese investor have certain strong preference about predictability, about clarity. And when we're talking about good investor, they want something that is long-term. So if the provision of the law is very clear, their long-term interest could be dealt with, I think that's important. So I think what we should do is keep working on this, improve where it needed, but we also have to balance between having a complete legal framework and over-regulating.
Yes.
Yeah. I think over-regulating may give a negative effect.
Yeah.
And due process is very important as well. It's important. It is good to regulate, but you also have to make the regulation practical. For example, now we are in a digital world. When we talk about data protections, maybe we debate in terms of policy where there is a need to have localizations of data, for example. But if we want to go that direction, please also think about practicality. To localize the data, we need massive data center.
Data center, yeah.
So what effort we do to make it ready? It's like you don't want me to park the car here, but do you make the parking available to do that? So I think it's multifaceted. I think that's important. As long as the government is willing to dialogue with the private sector. To be honest, private sector just want ability to do good business here. And of course, we want the host government to know what private sector want. So as long as keep an open dialogue, mindset, that I think a lot of challenge can be solved. Yeah.
I think what you're saying is about how do we keep the compliance at a minimum. I always say, because I used to practice law also myself years ago, don't confuse regulation and strangulation. Because yes, compliance matter. We need to have a good compliance system, but when you over-regulate, you deter, a lot of investment. So on compliance issue, Matt, you sit on a few board. How do you see the compliance issue?
The two things with compliance, one is we don't have a good repository of laws, so you do not know what the laws are a lot of the time because they're made at the executive level. We do know what comes out of the National Assembly. That's quite well promoted. That's quite well known. It happens now and again. But what affects our life day to day, what comes out of the executive. And they issue those executive regulations they procast without really properly notifying. So we can end up in breach of a law without realising it's a law. And I sit on the board of a bank and an insurance company. This is a big issue because somebody somewhere has found out a regulation's been issued that impacts us, but there's no uniform way, easy way of accessing. So we need a better repository of laws and notification of when laws come out, firstly. But also the other thing Cambodia does, I've noticed in the past, is a knee-jerk reaction. They'll issue a prakast based to address a situation, but they have to apply it across the board. And I thought the best example of that was with the seniority payment. The rules around seniority payment was made to address an issue in the factory sector. Okay, it was an issue. But by applying that across the board was massively disabling to businesses because it didn't fit the circumstances of the rest of the economy. So they'll take one situation, make a pretty severe law to address it, and it's like a nail on the hammer approach. But that it's massively expensive for the rest of the economy to comply with that. So compliance is very expensive for business. So the more rules you have, of course, the more costly it is to comply with that. But they've got to be more circumspect with regard to when they bring out a law, what does it do to the rest of the economy before they make that move? And if it's going to cause more problems than it solves, they need to go another way. And I think that's been a problem in the past because my sense is the ministries don't work together that well in terms of that. But one ministry will make a law to address an issue it has. In this case, it was a Labor ministry, but it had a massive impact across all the different sectors of society. The base having to apply this seniority payment thing had a massively detrimental impact. So I think that's been a problem in the past. So there needs to be, firstly, yes, a better repository of laws where we know when a law comes out what it is, so we can ready ourselves to do it. But there also needs to be an understanding by the government. Don't just make a law to do. Let's look at basically the impact across the board first before we do that. So I think those two things.
And so I want to add that on the top of Matthew say, we also see some instance where certain practice result in a somehow retrospective application of certain. That's very important. Because
the law should not be retroactive.
Yeah, I mean the law does not say that, but the practice it somehow gives. So I think if it is kind of issue that government implementation agency could deal with it, I think that helps.
Mal, I want to look more into the future because the future has a lot of uncertainty, a lot of new area, like on climate change, for example. We talk about climate change, but then some international financial institutions can even not use that word because some big countries say we don't believe in climate change, for example. I won't mention the name of the country. But the reality is that a lot of new areas are surfacing, and I don't think that for a small country like Cambodia, for practicing lawyers who are dealing on the day-to-day with commercial issue, you are supposed to follow all that because it's not your area of how you earn your living. But the fact of the matter is that all this law, this regulation that is happening somewhere else have a direct impact on us. So how do you see, in terms of capacity building wise, program wise, we can come up to support the government to tackle all that?
Yeah, I think you raise a very important. We at the private sector, we also have to look very far. We have to look what the issue that our client is facing. The area that you mentioned, we do investment. We send people to get specialized training. We also, when they do come to us on career advice, we give them advice. And we already starting working on that actually, and we also learn by doing. It's important, and I fully agree with you that those kind aspect, if we do not commit to understand them now, we're gonna be lag behind. We even not competitive at some point in time, and we probably excluded from certain opportunity. And this is very complex to understand, but to understand what this is about, to understand the ecosystem, the stakeholder, and what are the means to achieve this. Yeah. So.
Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, these are government issues more so than legal issues. Right? So this is policy, but it's a good point that we need to understand it.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, 10 years from now, we can be left high and dry because the world's moved on and we've missed the boat on that. And I think that, the electrification of cars, for example, the world clearly is going that way, whether you believe in climate change or not. Clearly those decisions have been made. Now, if we don't now ready ourselves infrastructure-wise, knowing that in 5 years from now, 10, there's going to be less and less petrol-driven cars, but also there'll be pressure from the rest of the world. If you're doing it, you'll be frowned upon if you do that, and there could well be then impacts in your dealing with other countries. So we have to, the biggest issue for Cambodia, understanding that globally, where the world's going. And there's a policy decision at government level, right? But where the world's going, don't we then need to, amend our legal framework to accommodate this future thing happening? It's hard to sell, when it's not now, to convince people this is necessary. That's the problem, right? And especially if it costs.
Well, okay. So I think ultimately to sustain economic growth of a country, you have to diversify. It's quite clear. I mean, the dependence on a few sectors in one or two countries is not the answer. But when you diversify, you will encounter, legal issue. And this is where I see also the role of the private sector, the legal community, so that they are ahead of the game.
To accompany,
yes. Yeah. To explain, because sometimes business are business. They are not lawyer. Yeah. They are not multinational with a team of big legal team. Yeah. They are business. But how in the context of a country like Cambodia, we're small. The legal community is small. How do you, all in the private sector, you have to take a first step to try to understand the trend, to try to understand what is coming in terms of legal aspect that accompany this trend.
Yeah. As I say, that we spend time with our clients. Yeah. We anticipate the challenge that they have. For example, data is a new mining. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So we have, for example, consistently spend time provide briefing to our clients, how they have to deal with use of data. In terms of it's important that in business where on the business side they want to use the data as much as possible, but you have to know the framework to do that. But at the same time, that data can be at risk. So what happens if there's a data breach, something like that? So now we invest a lot of time with our clients, and it's same thing in certain specialized area like energy. So it's not an easy area for people to understand and anticipate. But the more we brief them and their business partner, and most important, like say, convince them that there's opportunity ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we, as a law firm, what we need to do is train our lawyers in these new areas before they're in Cambodia. Yeah. And that's right now we have it with the bond market, for example. The lack of understanding around securities bond market, that's going to be a massive thing going forward. It has to be. Yeah. We need to, as lawyers, understand that first before investors and our clients can basically start operating in that area. We need to understand fully how that works and then help put that legal framework in place. Liquidations are coming up, for example, so that concept of how that's handled properly. Again, we need our lawyers to understand this first. And what's happened in Cambodia in the past is industries have arrived before the law, the life insurance industry, for example, and the regulators play catch up. And they're basically told by the players how it works. But our lawyers need to understand these areas before they come to Cambodia. I think that's our role, is to identify that, to get that expertise within the law firm, because how can we expect our clients to know what to do if we don't understand the legal framework? It's our role to advise them, right? But I think that whole securities area, the bond market, etc., the listings, it's been very low here because there's a real lack of understanding of how it works. But that's what needs to be happening in Cambodia. That's a law school issue, for example, but I think at the law firm level, we need to be getting that expertise into our firms, anticipating these new areas. And I think energy is exactly renewable energy, all that stuff. You know, when they had the carbon trading thing, Cambodia, massive opportunity set. No one understood how that worked at the Cambodia level with law firms. No one had expertise in carbon trading. But if you could have that expertise and you can attract clients, that was big money to be had. So we need the expertise.
Yeah. Come 2029, when we graduate from the least developed country status, you know, the dynamics of development will change. Because number one, trade preference will disappear to a certain extent, meaning we need to open a new market. It's okay because it's from your perspective, from the legal perspective, it's just a market diversification thing. But in the area of infrastructure, for example, of energy, of development finance, all these things will change because you no more a category where the world's supposed to help you. You have to, as a country, we have to be able to play by the rule of the big boys, right? And these things are not something that you can learn just overnight. It takes time. Right? You mentioned the bond market, for example. These are instruments that require specialty knowledge.
Yeah, I think we can no longer rely on concessional loan to develop our infrastructure. We have to go to banks that doing that. But at the same time, I also believe that it's a good way. Normally, when they are doing with good banks, the company who doing that also come with the quality. So we probably expect to have a good quality infrastructure. So the effort to attract the operator and the good financier is important. Yeah, bankability project is
Bankability project, banks who are involved in all this financing, they need good in-house. Okay? I remember about 15 years ago, you talk about in-house counsel. What is that? You know. Now most of the big institutions have in-house counsel, which is good. But I think that's on the private sector side because they have to deal with compliance issue. But what I want to see more is on the government side, because each ministry, they should be housed by some good lawyer, because all these civil servant, right? They may be lawyer, but they are former civil servant. You need them qualified so that they can draft good regulation, so that they can prepare regulation that are responsive to the private sector. Like, for example, now we impose a regulatory impact assessment, for example. Do you need to have that regulation or not, right? Not everything is resolved by law, by regulation. So I think it's a combination. You need your counterpart in the government.
With a stakeholder.
Yes, to know as much as you on the private sector. But I think this is something that we as a country, as a government, we have to move to that direction. Because if not, you have a asymmetric level of knowledge. And that's not good because one side would take advantage of the other.
But I'm very positive. I see a lot of Cambodian talent willing to take a very specialized topic in their education. So quite positive. Quite positive. It's.
But the idea is, how do you attract those people to the government?
Yes.
Right. I remember we were teaching here back in the 90s, and we asked the class, if you were graduating law, where would you go and work? And in those days, the two answers were the government and the NGO sector. No one but nobody considered going to private sector. Now, of course, private sector is an attractive place for a lawyer to be because the salaries are there, the opportunities are there, so bold. So now the issue is, how do we get that talent into government where it's needed in terms of administrative law and creating the laws and uniformity, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's, I think you'd say the university is now much better, and they are specialists in certain areas, which is great. They're offering that now here in Cambodia. And a lot of the returnees from overseas come back with a very high level of knowledge in certain areas, but we need to get them into areas where it's more useful, where their talents are more useful. I think that's now the challenge.
The government should find a way to have the opportunity to absorb them. because if those talent could not be absorbed, it will be missed.
Okay. Looking forward in the area of commercial law, what are the gaps that you think for the next 5 or 10 years you think we need to work on that?
I think look at the policy. I think the good things now I see is that every big topic government have a policy. Okay, like energy, we have power development plan. In other sector, we have it. I think the good direction is already known. It's just that when they prepare regulation, we hope that they are more collaborate among different agencies. The most important is to make those regulations practical. Okay. Practical and try to balance between regulation and over-regulate. And that's all what we need for now. Yeah, and keep going. And at the moment, we have a lot of positive thing to sell, but what we need is to change the perceptions. Okay. Change the perception of the country. Of implementation of the law.
Okay. Yeah.
For me, there's two things. One is, I addressed earlier, I think, and it's happening, is there needs to be more and more certainty as to what the rules are at every single interface with the government. So in the scheduling of fees, for example, it's happening, we need that. Investors need to know for sure what the steps are, how much it costs. The second thing is we now need to start being willing to go back to old laws and review them, to renew them, to accommodate the new situation. And I think the biggest example is the labour law. The labour law was written in 1997 when it was written for factories. It was only fits a factory scenario. Cambodia's moved on a lot since, so we need to look at that law, and you'd be surprised how often that's an impediment to investors coming out because it doesn't fit hotels, it doesn't fit houses, it doesn't fit a number of scenarios. So we need to be willing to take some of these head laws and then update them, revise them to fit today's situation. I think those two things will fill gaps, but will also remedy where some of the problems are.
It's the same thing for power purchase agreement, PPA. So far, there's a single template that is applied for every project. But I think when we move to renewable energy, there are quite a lot of new elements. So if a new adjusted template could be addressed, the investor will be more happy.
Well, that on the domestic side, but we also have to be mindful that we're moving to a world where, I don't want to say we're deglobalizing, we're more like reglobalizing, but all the things will entail a series of legal changes, and that the commercial lawyer have to be mindful of that, and you have to anticipate, and you have to learn more faster. Because all these things, and I mentioned, for example, when the European Union will introduce the carbon tax law, for example, in a digital world, when they introduce new tax regulation, all this will have an impact on us. So we need to know more of international private law. This is very important, that you got to start to understand more. You got to start to be involved more in that.
We're willing to learn, anticipate investment in education and more interactive with them. It's very important. And I mean, we are even become more and more competitive than before. We need to survive the competition.
And particularly with our major trading partners, we need to understand what their rules are. Because at the end of the day, that's how we make our money, right? Trading with them. So I thought the EU was the one where they did the data protection a number of years ago, and the whole world suddenly had to comply if you had it. And so all our banks were scurrying to suddenly change that, to make sure they were complying with the EU's data protection laws. But whoever our major trading partners are, particularly, we need to understand what their rules are and be able to adapt here to fit in with that. Because it is going to be an even playing field. Come 2029, we no longer have those benefits, so we've got to compete like everybody else. Absolutely.
I think understanding the rule of our trading partner matter, Like, for example, what's happening in the U.S. with the tariff issue. You got to understand what's happening. How do the U.S. compute the tariff? What are their reasoning? What are their logic, right? And then you have to shift.
You also have to understand the exception.
The exception also. There's a rule, there's the exception. But we also have to understand also the other side of the Atlantic, because the Europeans are moving in one direction, and then what happened to our region, the East Asia region, Japan, China, Australia. Well, I think we're not rocking the boat much in our region, but still, all these things will impact how you attract investment, how you help transact all these trade agreements.
Yeah, I just want to add quickly, when you say that the trading partner is shifting, we have to accelerate some bilateral trade, but also some specialized aspect like double taxations. So I think if we have more double taxation with a lot of countries, it will comfort their investors.
It's more attractive to certain investors.
Yes,
that's right.
And I think moving forward, we in the context of our graduation, where we will lose some trade preference. Of course, with the European Union, we got a break, got another extra 3 years, of break. But again, that's only a European Union. We have to look at other markets and look at for example, the CPTPP, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which is another mega trade agreement. That agreement have very high standard requirement in terms of labor law, in terms of environment, all that. Of course, it starts with the government side, right? But if it starts with government, at some point, it will filter down to the private sector. So that's why I think for Cambodia, we come a long way, right? For the last 30 years. But still, I look forward, it's still a long way.
Yes.
It's a good point you make. I mean, when we review these laws, not just for practicality on a domestic level, but also vis-a-vis our international obligations. That's right. So if there are requirements for labour law needs to be a certain way, we need to look at that labour law for how it fits now with the evolved Cambodia. It's different to what it was 20 years ago, but also, what it means in terms of our trade and potential trading partners and what we're going to need. So another reason we need to start reviewing some of these head laws. Absolutely.
They have to be seen as investment friendly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, investment friendly is definitely the way to go, but having the capacity, our lawyer, to be able to defend this agreement, this contract, and that's why I'm so pleased to see the progress of the NCAC, the National Commercial Arbitration Center that you are now started. It's like wine, right? Bottle,
Take some time.
Take some time, but it's drinkable, right? Not Grand Cru, but it's drinkable. But that's how you build the capacity. That's how you build the capacity. And at some point, because let's face it, we are in ASEAN, okay? ASEAN Economic Community, on paper anyway. But, by having this market, opening, you are able to transact with other country on the same equal playing field, right? But again, you got to know the rules. And trade rules are very different than commercial practice where you're more FDI, inward, right? You look at law, you establish regulation to attract FDI. But export is another dimension of trade rule, of legal expertise. That unfortunately is not for everybody, right? When you talk about rule of origin, you talk about anti-dumping, counterweighting. This thing requires specialty. But I think the legal community should start specializing that. You have to have law firms that specialize in international trade, in FDI. I think we have a lot in FDI. But what do you think of that specialization?
Yes, I fully agree that we, as a strategy of each service provider, we need to determine what we want to be in the next 10 years. I think specialization is important because at the end of the day, the client want a best advice who can accompany them. Yeah, I fully agree with that. Yeah, we are learning every day.
Yeah. Well, what you don't want to charge client to learn. Okay.
Yes, we have to be fair.
You have to be fair. Be fair.
Yeah, we want to charge the client. The client doesn't want us to charge them. Yeah. But this is the point. I think what we're saying now is, yes, we do need this expertise, but it's an investment now for future profit. That's the problem. Right now, we don't have that work, but we need the expertise now for the future work. So it's like any business. We're going to have to invest now, but the returns will come in the future in these new areas. Because right now we have to pay the bills. So our lawyers are learning what's necessary to address their clients' needs right now. What we're talking about here is let's invest in addition to that for future work, really, and that's the balance, right? We need to be able to invest in that.
I mean, for me, from the government perspective, we like to see a legal community that are quite focused, diversified, robust, that can provide the comfort to investment in area that sometimes is not the regular area. You're talking about now renewable energy is very recent. The last our policy was less than 5 years. So these are areas that you need to invest. You need to focus. International law, private international, definitely an area that we need to focus. Export regulation, you need to invest in that.
A lot of specialized things, even aviation.
Yeah.
If we have a new airport, tourists is very much depending on how easy people can fly here. So I expect that we need to find a way to attract new airline to come.
Yeah.
And aviation is also a specialized area.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about if you want to lease an Airbus, who have the expertise, to negotiate a lease agreement with Airbus.
Yeah, we had this issue once many years ago, and I was with the former law firm Sharoni, and there was an airline here that was going into liquidation. Their planes were obviously leased, and so the International Leasing Finance Corporation out of LA needed assistance here because the plane was here and how to enforce that security. There was no expertise here. No expertise here on aviation law. Yeah. So we need to think about areas that aren't here now, but
But that's what excites us. We want to do groundbreaking work and help the country.
It's a good subject for a seminar. I mean, we used to go to the in-house Congress in Hong Kong, where all the in-house councils would get together and discuss their issues, even though they were competitors, technically different companies, but they would discuss their issues as a uniform group. And then we were in the audience as the law firms that they would brief to, they would engage. And so I think we should sort of do things like that here. If we can get together the lawyer community as a whole and discuss these issues, have a legal congress with government lawyers, private sector lawyers, and even to the development lawyers to the degree. And have those discussions. I think a lot would come from it because there's probably a lot of expertise within the community we don't know about, UD doesn't know about, and maybe there, I don't know. It would be a good topic for a seminar, actually, this concept.
Well, I would say
sponsored by TVK.
Time fly, and fortunately we're running out of time. But it's as we engage in a dialogue, it's getting more and more interesting. And by the time we get a stage, we're almost running out of time. But let me just say that our conversation clearly have identified a lot of good areas that I hope whoever listening and watching our program, if they are in as a stakeholder, they can start thinking about that. Whether the practitioner, they have to say, I have to learn more in this field. If they're working for the government, now I have to be more specialized. So that's the value of having this frank, interactive discussion.
Everyone have a role to play.
Yeah. And it sort of stimulate ideas that we should be considering, So anyway, I want to say thank you all for taking the time to come. And then I hope that for the audience, you all have an opportunity to appreciate on this particular issue, which is the legal reform, legal framework, legal development. But I think it's more focused on the commercial investment, doing business, trade side. But at the end of the day, it's all about one thing, which is predictability of a system. It's all about giving comfort, assurance that we are a country obeying the rule of law. Yeah. And that's ultimately, that's the main message that me now in the Council for Legal Reform was working toward that end, that at some point Cambodia should be like any other advanced country, that we can provide a legal system that can give comfort to investor, to trader, and we can say, look, come invest in Cambodia because you are safe, you are secure, and you can prosper with us. So I think on that note, I want to say thank you to Youdi. Thank you so much. Matt, thank you. And we see each other at the next session. Thank you.